Thank you for joining us. And thank you for being involved in First We Bombed in New Mexico. Like I said, I watched the documentary. It was really good. It was really affecting. I'm actually from Northern Nevada.
Oh,
Yeah,
so you are familiar.
I am. Yeah. Have you heard of the Fallon leukemia cluster?
I haven't, but that's a part of, I think, you guys are all wrapped up in what we're doing too. And we're so happy. There's all these little downwinder groups around, like grassroots downwinder groups around the country that have been called to action because, it's a pervasive problem. And I think it's one that not a lot of people know about. Not a lot of people have had any sort of guidance or any sort of reparations or healthcare. And so part of what our film is doing, First We Bomb New Mexico, is to try and compel Congress to renew the RECA Act. The RECA is Radiation Exposure Coverage Act. And it expires June of this year, 2024. And so we are just, it's a treadmill and we're really running and pushing hard so that, it has not only gets renewed, but it's also expanded to include a lot of the areas that were affected by a lot of the atomic bombing that took place here in this country on U.S. citizen soil and U.S. Citizens themselves.
Yeah. The team did such a good job composing and assembling this film. I don't even know where to start other than again, thanking you for
It's meaty. Yeah.
It is. I was watching it and getting into it and just thinking this is covering so much ground. It's covering government conspiracies, environmental justice, climate justice, environmental justice. I come from a climate background, so my brain, I was singing colleague earlier, my brain was on that track.
Yeah.
But how did you first get involved with Lois and the film?
Yeah, so my late husband grew up in New Mexico. He moved there at the age of 10. His family moved them there, and they were able to buy a house 12 miles away from the Trinity bomb site as the crow flies, which is in itself so bonkers. I mean, it's how is that house even for sale that anybody can live there 12 miles away from where they detonated the Trinity bomb? And, they like to pretend it's safe down there. They like to open it up to the public twice a year. They've got the White Sands National Park where kids go and roll around in the sand. It is not safe. It is not safe for anybody to visit. And I think, my husband, unfortunately, was a testament to that. So he grew up there from ages 10 to 18, and he was diagnosed at the age of 35 with glioblastoma, which is a head, brain cancer, and unfortunately passed away in 2021 from the cancer itself. And it was very aggressive, very fast moving. And so after his diagnosis, he came out of his second brain surgery. And he was a man on fire. He was so inspired to get his story out because, he grew up there and had no idea of the history in that area. And he wanted people to know, Americans to know that what had transpired with their government, the fact that the government bombed their own citizens before they bombed Japan. And he wanted to use his story as a force of good. And so he sought out Tina Cordova, who's the head of the Tularosa Downwinders group. And he was very insistent. He's like, it has to be a movie. It has to be a movie. And lo and behold, they were doing a documentary. And so it just kind of came together, and they came and filmed a day at our house. They filmed during some treatment he was getting at a hospital down in Santa Monica. And I'm just so thankful because this is his legacy. And so now I'm able to kind of carry forth that legacy, even though he's no longer with us. So.
That's really amazing. I didn't know how much of a driving force he was in driving that story forward. That's so much.
Yeah. It's very heavy. Thank you. Yeah, it's very heavy. I mean, we were the whole thing's shocking. I mean, the fact that he, was diagnosed at 35, and they've done a study on Chernobyl, children who are exposed, and children, when they're exposed to certain environmental elements, they're like little sponges. They soak it up because their cell division is so much more rapid than as an adult. And so they were showing in the study that the children that were exposed during Chernobyl, it was about 23.5 years later that they developed glioblastoma brain cancer. And so that would have put him smack dab age 13, 14, which is when he was living there. And I think also, originally the thought was, I think they thought the radiation was going to react into the soil deeper than it has. It's really just the top layer, 10 centimeters. And it's, that's not much. And so New Mexico being New Mexican, it's like the winds down there and the storms, that swirls up. You think about all the water runoff. And then, of course, being just 12 miles away from the White Sands missile range, where they're actively blowing up artillery, and that blows it up into the atmosphere again. So, it's like an ongoing problem. Plutonium has a half-life of 24,000 years, half-life. Yeah. It's not going away. And the fact that the government up until now really has kind of shushed it, they've squashed it, and don't want to really acknowledge it, don't want to pay reparations or provide health care to the multi-generational cancers that have developed in that area is really disappointing, to put it lightly. So,
yeah. What does it mean to you to have the story and the film screened at not just this film festival, but on the circuit that you've been taking it to?
Ooh, you make me cry. It's just so, it's hard to put into words, because the moment I saw the finished film was when we were premiering in Santa Fe, which I thought was so appropriate for this film. We had a really great reception there. We won Best New Mexican Documentary, and we won Audience Choice, which was a great award. And then since then, we've won a couple other awards as well, including Best of Fest in Palm Springs. And so the moment I saw him and heard his voice again on screen, it was just like electric shock, and it was a rough watch, not because the movie was bad, of course, but because it's just so exciting to see him again. And then at the same time, just so, heartbreaking, because he's not here to see it with me. And I'm like, this is all you put these wheels into motion. Your story is out there because you were so compelled to tell it. And I feel so inspired still by him, and just so honored that I get to carry forth, what he set in motion.
That's so powerful. I just composed
myself we're all gonna cry. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's been interesting too, because it's been, I think Santa Fe, when we premiered, it was about 2.5 years after his death. And, I've had people ask, how is that? And I think one of the compelling things about grief is people sometimes get scared to talk about, a loved one that's passed away, because they think it's going to bring up a lot of bad feelings, which understandable. But at the end of the day, I get to talk about him, and I love that. It is so wonderful. I can talk about him all day. Yeah. And I think it's so important too to keep, his vision and who he was as a person. The fact that he was really wanting to help people alive in the world, and so that kind of keeps those good vibes that he sent out there going. So
yeah. What do you hope that the documentary will accomplish related to legislation, RECA, awareness, advocacy?
Yeah, well, there's so many things. I think this documentary itself follows the protagonist. Our story is a small one in it, but it follows the protagonist, Tina Cordova, and she's lived there multi generations, and her family tells her story of multi generational cancers and disease. She herself is a cancer survivor, and even just now, her niece, unfortunately, has thyroid cancer. So it's not stopping. It's not one of those one and done things. And I think a lot of this is to try and educate the public, inform them, make it aware that, especially in light of a lot of kind of the stir up of wartime around the world, that this isn't just a contained thing. I think, yes, New Mexican people were bombed, but a recent study out of Princeton using historical weather data followed the radioactive cloud, because they've never done that before. They've never studied it formally, and they reenacted the fallout cloud, and it went to 46 states, Mexico, and Canada. And that is one bomb. That's one bomb. There's been 94 above ground atomic testing in Nevada, Utah, most of the West, really. And so there's a lot of people that are living downwind to these blasts, and they have no idea. And, I think the common, eat healthy, exercise, well, guess what? If you've been exposed meaningfully to a radiational element such as atomic bomb, radionuclides, there's no amount of kale out there that's going to help you. It just is, it's really disappointing and sad. So I think viewership, of course, awareness, education, and then, of course, trying to compel Congress and the Senate to renew RECA and expand it to include New Mexico. Right now, it doesn't even include New Mexico, even though there's a cradle-to-grave nuclear, factory there. They mine it, they store it, they refine it, and then, it's horrific. So,
what's the main barrier, do you think, to getting congressional votes?
Well, weirdly enough, it's not bipartisan. It has support. Senator Lujan and Senator Hawley out of Missouri, both, among others, signed this bill. They tried to get it a part of the national defense bill that was being passed recently, and it was unheard of, right? Red and blue come together. Because cancer doesn't play politics, and so it actually came down to a red versus red. Mitch McConnell, unfortunately, struck it out because he had, from what I've heard, kind of a beef with Josh Hawley. So we have to start all over, which is disappointing. And so we're trying to look at other bills that we can attach this act to and move it forward. So I guess my ask is if you can call your congressperson, your senator, to let them know that this is an important bill, not only for New Mexicans, of course, but for a lot of the states in the U.S. And just really compel them and let them know that this is a meaningful act, and it needs to be renewed in June 2024.
What has the financial impact been on you having to deal, the cost of medical treatment, especially for rare conditions, is astronomical, especially in this country.
Yeah.
What's that been like?
Well, glioblastoma is one of the most expensive cancers out there is to treat. There's no cure. There's really very little treatments, and most of them are totally ineffective. So I think New Mexico itself is one of the poorest states in the nation, and I don't think that's an accident. When you look at a family member who gets sick, especially out in a very rural area, there's not a lot of places to go get treatment. B, if you do seek treatment, it's very expensive. and see what happened with Trevor. He owned his own business, but I mean, if you have to quit your job because you're so sick you can't work, well, that's a loss of healthcare right there, because healthcare is tied to employment and with so many people. So, you know, that just kind of sends it into a spiral. And at a certain point, you know, as more and more family members, and we're talking, some of the families in New Mexico have had almost, you know, tens to, you know, people die in their family, and there's no backup there, and there's no way to build generational wealth either. And so it's kind of all kind of accumulates then with New Mexican being just a poor state, unfortunately, because of what's happened. And so part of the RECA Act is asking for medical care from the government and asking them to be accountable to the people that they bombed and the atrocity that occurred out there and how it's affecting multi-generational families now.
Yeah, that's an insane level of disenfranchisement. That is
the very definition of disenfranchisement at the hands of your own government.
It is.
Soapbox.
Yes.
What makes you feel hopeful? I want to close on.
Yeah, I know.
Sure.
I didn't want to interrupt you because you speak so beautifully. I'm like, and then you factor in
Yeah.
an indigenous population.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's been an incredible year for this film to finish. Lois Lippman, the director and the producer, has been incredibly tenacious, and she has seen this project through so many hurdles, so many barriers. And so our hope is that people are exposed, no pun intended, to the film, but also, you know, have a moment to take stock on, you know, family that they've known that, you know, may have been exposed in some level to, you know, or may have had their cancer caused in some level by perhaps being exposed to radiation. And the fact that we still have people that are being affected by it. So just support there. We're looking forward to hopefully too telling the rest of the story of Oppenheimer too. Oppenheimer is a great film, really beautiful film. I think my personal hope is that people learn what has happened afterwards, not just from the scientist's point of view, from the government's point of view, but from the people's point of view.